one of the most important lessons I learned in my time in the military was he said, I don't care if you have all the answers. I don't want you to have all the answers. I want you to know how to find the answers. And it sounds like every area of your life, you're just able to find the answers. And I think it's a form of building the parachute as you go. You know, and I normally don't like that analogy, but because it encourages people to walk into things blind, but you're showing that just by stepping up and doing it, you can find a way. And if you really want to do it, you'll find a way. And if not, you'll find an excuse.
Ted, welcome. Appreciate you coming here. You were my first podcast I was on was yours, and I think Tanner as well. So
broke the podcast virginity right here. I love it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny because had you not asked me that day to do your podcast, I mean, you remember how scared I was whenever you asked me. Like I didn't want to do it.
You were nervous, yeah.
I called my wife and I was like, I don't want to do this. But I knew that fear meant there was something I had to do. So even though I was scared, I still did it. But we wouldn't be having this conversation had I not had that first one with you. So.
You guys running in danger for a living.
Yeah. Hey, that's what I said. Like if it's fearful, it's probably something I need to do.
Yeah.
So get over the fear. So
you guys did a great job though. It was a good podcast, good interviews.
Yeah. So you did it before me. I don't remember.
I think I was number 13.
Yeah, it was right in the beginning.
Yeah.
So you're due for a comeback because we've actually starting to go back and review all the ones from the beginning. Yes.
Comeback tour.
Yes.
So obviously you have a podcast called RIA Radio.
Yep.
What RIA meaning?
Real Estate Investment Association.
Okay. And then you run the local RIA as well.
Yep. Omaha RIA.
Can you kind of break that down and what led you into that? Why the RIA? Why RIA Radio? Why the podcast?
Well, I guess it's more important to kind of discover, why I even thought it would be a good idea. And, just kind of like you guys getting into real estate, I wanted to build my portfolio of clients. And the most important way to do that was attending the local meetup. So I attended every meetup for, before I took over the local RIA from like 2015 on. I never missed an event. And my goal at the time was to build my client list, find off-market properties, but also get to know every single wholesaler.
Is that when you became an agent in 15?
Yeah, 2015. Okay. And actually, last month was my 10 years. So I've been, this is 2025, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 2015. I was thinking 24 for a minute. But yeah, so I attended all of the events I could possibly go to. It came to a point where Andy was running the local RIA, and I heard him mention at one point he'd love to live in Florida. So more of a joke, and I was just reading in a book, happens to be that week, and it said, start your own meetup group or start your own RIA or take over a RIA. And I was like, so I went to Andy, I'm like, hey, Andy, well, if you ever want to retire, just keep me on your list. I'd be open to taking over the group, thinking I could just take it over and not have to buy it. And then about a year later, he's like, hey, you're the only person that's ever said that to me. And that led into him putting a price out there to purchase it. Took it over technically this was take over April 2020, about as the start of the pandemic. And then around June, he's like, I got another person that I can sell it to if you're not going to jump on this opportunity. So I told my wife, I was like, hey, for the price of our marketing budget we put for real estate, we can take over this local RIA. And she's like, do you think this is going to be a good idea? Because at the time I had 72 members, and it was pretty bare bones. I don't know if you guys ever attended it back then, but
no. 2020 was when I
it was
right after you.
Yeah, 21 or 22 for me.
So it was just held at a school, and there was a lot of gurus that came in, that were just trying to like
recruit.
Yeah. Buy this $20,000 class, which is a $40,000 class, which is a $100,000 class. And that really wouldn't bother me, but I had somebody come speak to me, and she got stuck in one of those. And by the time she was on the third leg of that, she was in, and she was originally from Mexico. And by this time she put a second mortgage on her personal home in town. She had leveraged her house in Mexico, and they took $80,000 in credit card loans out at 0% interest to purchase an investment property that they help her find. And then the contractors they brought in were all scam artists. Oh, man. So it really like tugged at my heart, because this woman's broken, and she's like trying to I'm trying to help her. But this house that was under construction, all they did was literally tear half of it down and tear the roof off because they're going to put an addition on, didn't tarp it or anything. So it was just condemned home. And so she lost everything. And I was just like, man, if I do this, I wouldn't have the gurus. And, you know, the other thing was, although Andy's a great guy and I have nothing against him, but this is just how a lot of the RIAs work is, you know, first off, if some of these gurus come in, they get half the money. So if they're paying 50,000, 25 of that's going back to the RIA owners. That's why some of these RIAs are making $1 million a year just off of this. And, you know, so that was part of it. Plus it was turning about 75 to 80% of the client base, you know, membership base every year. So you didn't have that retention. And so that was another thing that kind of stuck with me. I wanted to bring in local speakers, you know, successful stories, but also, I mean, we brought in some coaches and stuff that, you know, I thought were like, we brought in Jason Trees, and I mean, like, how do you not have Jason Trees come in town? And, you know, and of course he's trying to sell his coaching program, but it was also a legitimate program that was like, start off at $500 a month. It wasn't like an escalation guru program, you know? So I felt comfortable doing things like that, but yeah, I just felt like we could do it better. And, the thought I was trying to finish earlier is that, you know, Andy would put his Better Homes, you know, flags over everything. And which, as a real estate agent coming in there, I felt uncomfortable because I felt like because he was always like promoting himself. So one rule I had to myself was I wouldn't go out in front of everybody and promote myself as a real estate agent. So I try to do really good at that. You guys attend the events.
It's funny because I'll call you out on this because you bring your mom up.
She brings herself up.
Well, yeah, but it's funny because I'm like, I know this is Ted's property or whatever. So it is funny because you do take that backseat approach, if you will. Yeah.
So my mom lists all my properties and she does get up there and announce them, but they're investments, and it's an open mic where anybody that can come up and
she does a great job doing it.
So yes, she does do that.
It's not just your property.
She does shout out most of my properties. So,
but I think what you said is it's important for you to keep the culture as you're not going to get up on the stage where everyone's looking to you for guidance and then push your services. I think that's the focus. That even since I first started going, we had no idea that you were an agent for a while. And I think we went to maybe 4 or 5 meetings before you came out to us and said, "Hey, you guys ever thought about being agents?" And that's how we got in, was when...
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were at KW Elite and told Ted that I was looking to get my license. And he's like, "Well, come take a tour and, you know, see if it works for you."
And I mean, I hope I did say this to you too, but usually every person I talk to, I'm like, you should, you know, check out at least 2 or 3 places, sit in their team meetings, because you never want to just go off one person's recommendation.
Oh, we did too. Yeah. We went to the original KW. We went to Berkshire and Nebraska. Like, looked at them all and we're like, we want to do investment real estate. This makes sense. And it's funny. A couple weeks ago, I was looking back through all my old messages. I had conversations with Jeff before we even moved to Nebraska, just reaching out about becoming an agent, all that stuff. And
really,
yeah. And then
now, how do you get connected with him?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It was during the time when I just learned Bigger Pockets, and I was going through messaging, you know, probably Owen and Colin on Bigger Pockets, just saying, "Hey, you know, can you teach me the real estate?" And then finding brokerages just to reach out to the owners, and he passed on to Paul. And but yeah, it was a good fit. I mean, the way that DVG was structured was exactly what we were looking for at the beginning. And we learned a lot of the parts of business we don't like and a lot of the parts that we find we're good at. So,
yeah, it comes with time. There's a lot of things that I don't do anything that I did, you know, when I first got into real estate. That's for sure.
I can remember the $50,000 houses that we were walking. It was like, oh my gosh.
Now you're like, gosh, I wish it was more $50,000 houses.
Yeah, right.
But $50,000 for a house in Omaha, at least 10 years ago, probably wasn't that bad of a house.
10 years ago, no. I mean, there were South Omaha houses for $50,000 at that time. I'm reading the Art of the Slow Flip right now, and the whole business model is finding these $30,000 to $50,000 houses, and that are fixer uppers, and then getting somebody to literally you acquire them, you get a 12% private money loan on them for 5 years. You put it out there for somebody to purchase it with $3,000 to $5,000 down, no credit checks, and then $895 a month. And there's a whole business plan on this. And this guy's now got like a couple hundred of these, and then you pay them off within 2 years, and or within 5 years, all these properties will be paid off. That's what it is. And, obviously because you got your loan based on that, and you'll cash flow about $400 to $500 dollars per property based on the program. Wow. It's a very interesting book, but it's like, God, can I still get $30,000 to $50,000 properties right now?
Right. I bought with the wholesale fee, $55,000 property last year. So they're
still out there.
They're still out there.
Yeah.
I needed $50,000 worth of work, but they're out there. So
you should read that book. It might be an interesting option for that.
So what were the conversations like when, you said you were joking about buying the RIA to, oh crap, now it's actually real?
Yeah.
I know it's not your first jump into business, but.
Yeah. Well, so I was kind of blessed because in my previous life, I ran a nightlife company, and we were we were all around the country. My job was to create events. Mm. And so taking this over was kind of easy to be able to walk into this and say, hey, we're going to just create events. It's the same thing as doing nightclub events, but I'm just doing it for, which actually everybody who was doing nightclub events now is our age. So it makes it easy. Our age, not your age.
Hey, you're the oldest one at the table.
There we go.
Just for record.
And it's no different than doing a club event. I bring in the lighting, I bring in the sound. I'm bringing in a speaker that we actually want to listen to, and actually creating an event out of it. I think is different because most of the stuff that you see in town, and even I went to the Tampa RIA last year. I sat in a box of a hotel room like this, and it was just like blah. And then here comes the guru, and I'm like, man, it's just the same old shit. There's got to be a new way of doing things. So that was the conversation I was having with, the people around me. Like, what do you want to see? One thing that conversations I remember specifically having is you guys mentioned Colin and Owen. I had a phone call with Colin, and I said, hey, dude, I'm gonna start this meetup group. What's your take on me getting in front of everybody? Because at the time I had one rental property. Mm. And then I knew that I was going to be doing this. So into 2019, I bought a flip house. Just so I was like, I told my wife, I was like, there's no way I can get in front of all these people and have one rental property. And I'm going to get laughed off the stage. So she agreed to, that's what opened the doors so people start getting investing. And then Colin's like, nope, it's just about bringing people together. Don't worry about it. And then I called Owen, it said the same thing. I called Brad Bader because I was like, how do you get in front of all these people you look up to? And then try to run a group educating people on this. And it wasn't the education. It's just the community that you want to build. Yeah. And that's what had to change my mindset.
Colin had a meetup at that time, correct?
Shortly after.
Yeah. Okay. But he didn't have did he have a large portfolio when he started his meetup?
I think at that time he was already at 20 or 30 units. Like he put those letters out and he locked down like 50 deals, and then he sold a handful of them off.
Okay. Yeah, I own one now.
Yeah. So there's a few of those that I ended up selling off for him, which was really nice too. But I mean, he started the meetup at his events or at his properties. I think his first two meetings were at his properties.
Like, that's the way I remember him saying that.
Bring some beers, we'll go there. And so, but then, when he started his meetup, just like everything, I'm like, hey, how can I help you? And so I the first one at the bar, I ran the iPad to run the live video because I wanted to be involved. So
not morphed into Thursday Coffee.
Yeah.
Soho.
Yeah.
So kind of where it's at now.
That's Owen's thing.
Well, but it was kind of, Colin was stopping one, and so Owen picked that. That's my
I think
Owen was already helping.
Owen always wanted to have one. And then Colin, I think right now, last time I talked to him, he says he wants to do like a higher level commercial grade event where it's not fully open to the public. I think he wants to do a charged event. Last time I chatted with him, so
that'd be kind of interesting.
So we'll see.
So when obviously leaving Omaha Nightlife and starting a family and everything, how did that transition into being real estate and now real estate broker? Yeah,
so the reason it happened was I was working actually for Thrasher Basement Systems, and we had our first child, Carson, and he he was just a couple years old, and it came to a point where every third week I was out of town because I had a 4-state territory. And so every third week I was gone for a week. And it just got to a point where I didn't feel like he was missing me anymore. He wasn't running to me when I was getting home. He was getting way, way attached to my wife, Jessica. And it kind of started bothering me. On the side, I was doing, there's a local investors, Jerry Schlickburn, Mike Schlickburn, which you guys obviously know. And they were calling me to check out foundations for them on flips that they were doing. And I knew Mike because he was our first sales guy at Omaha Nightlife. And then I met Jerry the very first time they ever went on a date. So, or met on a bus party. So we had some connections already, and they knew my background. And so they after checking out foundations for them for a while, they're like, hey, would it by chance work out if you want to be our marketing director for our company? And I gave my number that I had to have, and then like, well, there's no way we can handle that. So they came back and said, this is the number that we're interested in. And it took me a couple months, but then after I kind of seeing what was going on at home and talking to the wife, we were like, we got to make this number work, which was was about 70,000 less than I was making currently in doing sales. Literally there was a desk that Jerry had. It was this big, and she was there and I was here. And for 6 to 9 months, this is how we worked. And so I went through kind of like become the office manager in a lot of ways. So, recreate a lot of the sales processes, and pretty much every process I get my hands on, I recreated for them. They didn't use a lot of it, but we recreated it. And then, but as I was sitting there, I learned, I was listening to all the real estate conversations. And eventually I started writing all the contracts and started walking the properties, and then started doing the communication for the clients. So then I became like marketing director, office director, and then now I'm starting to run the real estate. So it's just like, you need to get your real estate license. So I got my real estate license, which took a lot of times of taking that test. I'm not a great test taker, and eventually got the license. And yeah, so goes the story. End up being with them for, 9.5 years, and got my broker's license. Was the thing I hated the most. It was like my biggest regret was getting my broker's license. I wish I would have never gone down that road. But
why is that?
For 3 days a week, I did nothing but commission dealings. People, earnest deposit issues. We were all on the same team, so.
Well, you guys were. I was just licensed.
Earnest deposit issues, complaints. I gave up running leads, so all my leads were out there. I went from making pretty damn good money as an agent to negative. And so, it just, it was the worst pivot I could have taken. And financially, yeah.
And time wise.
And actually every category. Yeah. It was just the thing I wish I never would have done. So, anyway, so that led into me. I found roughly about 400 flip properties over the next 6 years. Like at the time, those 2015 to 2020, the opportunities were endless.
Right.
And so, I was finding flips and everything for Jerry and Mike. And I also had a couple agents that did nothing but run pro formas and run deals for me. So there was just like 2 or 3 of us consistently running deals. And I had a list of over 40 wholesalers because wholesaling was legal. And we called the wholesalers every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then we had a list of over 300 buyers. And then when we get the lead, we track it to the buyer on the list, nationwide buyers. And then we do a video walkthrough with them. A lot of times they bought them even for cash. And then I turn that over to the construction team to get the rehab done by Schlick. And Schlick was only doing rehab projects at the time. And it was just a really well-oiled machine. And I probably peaked at my close to $250,000 a year during that time frame. I even had flat rates with the Schlicks, and I was still making that because of the money I was making with the other stuff on top of that. It was insane. And pandemic happened and everything started shifting after that, you know, in every aspect, you know, when you're home. But, you know, luckily we were allowed to leave the house because we're real estate agents. So
that's essential.
Yeah. So I took advantage of that every single day.
It's essential for the economy.
Yeah, I get it.
That's what it comes down to.
I had my real estate shirt on everywhere I went. I'm like, where can I go?
Yeah. So it seems like you kind of talked about you left Thrasher to go do real estate, took a $70,000 haircut for the family. And that was kind of central to you. You talked earlier about your first rental property. I don't know, that was your grandma's property.
Yeah.
So that was family property as well. And you want to keep.
I bought that in 2008.
So you wanted to keep that in the family.
Yep.
So a lot of strings come back to family for you. I guess kind of where's that come from? Like, is it the way you were raised? Is it just something that you push into just kind of because it's most important to you, or what's
yeah? So
kickoff point.
Yeah, so my mom had me. My mom's an immigrant from Brazil. She came over to the country when she was 5, and she had me when she was 16, 17 years old, and then my biological dad died when I was 11 months old. So my mom raised me, and, you know, and we had so many stories, you know, from back in those days. And it was just, you know, it was a hard life, and my grandma flew back from Brazil to help take care of me. So I had 2 moms pretty much raising me. And I call my dad because he's the only dad I know. So, but dad really came in a circle when I was at first grade, and then they ended up getting married when I was like in high school. But you know, I was pretty much an only child. So my little brother's 17 years younger than I am. So, you know, my younger years, I was just an only child. You know, it was just me, and, you know, I was just really close to my mom, and I just, you know, family just meant a lot. You know, I didn't have a lot of family, so, you know, you gotta nurture what you have, right? And I think that's kind of where that stems from, if I really think about it. And I always just felt like I wanted to have kids, and you know, we all want to have an amazing relationship with our children. I think that's why we do what we do in a lot of ways. If you really like think deep about it, because I don't miss any opportunity I can. I volunteer everything at my kids' school. If it's the Halloween party or Valentine's Day party, if it's the fun run, you know, if it's a trip I get to go on, you know, I'm going to do it. You know, I do all of that. I'm also I commit to coaching at least one team. Sometimes I get stuck doing 2 teams consistently at a time. You know, so if it's basketball, volleyball, football, I haven't done baseball, but you know, I try to get involved with all that, and I also sponsor their sports too. So, but what we do lets us have that ability to be free and make it so our kids can remember these moments, because when they grow up, those memories are, I think, the most important as you get older. Because if you think about your childhood, those moments that you have with your parents are the things that you remember the most.
I'm listening to Atomic Habits right now, and there's a line that I heard last night about something about how a goal is basically arbitrary if you don't have systems to support it, and you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So what kind of systems have you had to implement to prioritize the family time? And obviously, you know, still not just being a parent, it's different to be a husband than it is to be a father.
Great question. The thing that I do really well at is I'm very good at time blocking in my calendar. So every single event that I have going on in my life, even all the way down to my quiet time breaks I take during the day, are in my calendar. And so you know, we have a family calendar. So my wife is really diligent about every family activity goes in there, and that's bright red that's in my calendar, so I know. And then you know, everything that if I'm podcasting, that's bright green, and everything that I do for my client meetings is all in a bright blue. And I time block every single thing I do. I time block when I'm going to the gym every morning. I time block my 2 quiet times, like I mentioned. I time block when I'm eating lunch, and even when I'm going to be home. And then on my phone, I actually turn it off unless you're on my top 10 important, your preferred contacts, whatever you have on your phone. So from 5 to 8, you can't, unless you call 3 times you in a row. My phone blocks everything out. So I do everything to try to create that time, because 5 o'clock is family time. And then when the kids are in bed, then I re-engage. My business coach said that's a mistake, and I'm trying to change that right now. And so, I've had a lot of rediscovery recently because of the business coach too, because we looked at my calendar, my life. My coach is Jason Dries. I hired him out, and so he looked at my life, and he goes, okay, so this is really important. I think it's good to mention. He goes, at what point were you the most successful in your life, and what were you doing, and what did your life look like? So we went through all that, and the most successful point in my life, I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning, going to the gym, and then coming home, taking the kids to school. Then I was planning out time for meetings in the morning, meeting with somebody at lunch, and then home by 5, and then reading physical reading a book before bed, and being in bed before 10. And so he's like, first off, he goes, I don't get up before 10 a.m. And I know that's where I'm best in my life, but you're telling me right now that that's not when you're successful.
Jason says he doesn't get up till 10?
Yeah. And
hire him now.
Yeah, right. because he says everybody's different. Yeah. He goes, you can't put everybody in the same cloth, right? And so he's like, you're based on what you tell me. He goes, we need to rebuild your life like this, because right at that point when I hired him on, I was sleeping in until 6:45, taking the kids, and then I'd go to the gym at 8:30. Well, then I wasn't getting home and everything till 10:30, 11. And then I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. And then I got a shower. And then by the time we're done, I'm not actually doing something until 12 or 1 unless it was on my calendar. And so I was wasting that whole morning every day. And then I would kick my ass and work all night. Like I'd get the kids in bed. And then my rule was I put the laptop on my and start working until the battery died, and it was fully charged every time. And when it died, then I'd go to bed. And sometimes I'd do 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'd keep on repeating this cycle and getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep. So right now I'm on a 21-day challenge. I have to get 7 hours every night, no matter what. Wow. I have to go to the gym at least 5 days. So if I miss it during the week, then I'm making it up on the weekend. But I'm trying to be really diligent about not missing it. I got the Aura ring so I can track my sleep. And
did Owen talk you into that?
It was my birthday gift. And so just trying to do all this stuff to better myself. And it's been really going at this now for a few weeks, and it's been life-changing.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, I think the important part of what you said is that sometimes we don't have the discipline to do it on our own, and getting these tools, and it's almost like cheat codes to make it a little bit easier. And which calendar does your family use? Is it just like the Google Calendar?
Google, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, everything I do is on iPhone, but you can connect your Google Calendar in there. So
does your wife's Google Calendar share? Does it share back and forth between your work and?
Yeah, so we created a family Gmail account.
Okay.
And then we use that for anything that's, we give that to all the schools and everything. And then each of us have that account on our phones. And then we link that to our calendars. Okay. So if any of us add it, it automatically goes to it. And the kids all have iPads, so it goes to their calendars too, because they all want to know what's going on. And then whenever we sign up for sports, you can tag your calendar in there, and they'll auto upload all the sports calendar stuff right in there too.
So your kids get to see your work schedule?
Nope, they just see the family calendar.
They just see the family calendar.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, so I can show you. Maybe we'll see this on screen, but so in the red. So red is we have football practice night. We have run club tonight, family wise, and today it's wake up, quiet time, workout, did a coaching program. I'm hearing a podcast. I have a networking meeting. I'm doing another podcast, and then I even put the garbage days for Airbnbs in there.
Oh wow!
So I mean, and then what I need to read, bedtime, and then get to sleep
for 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
to wake. So that's not 7 hours though.
The sleeping thing is messed up on there, but yes.
Okay.
I've I've been going to bed by 10. So
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned all that because my wife and I were talking about our calendars because everything's set. I got my work stuff, family, similar to that, but there's no synergy between the two of them. So trying to figure it out.
really holds accountable if you create a calendar that can go on everybody's calendar. You can imagine if you have like 7 kids and then they had all access to them.
Speaking of accountability, is that what coaching's helped you with the most, or is being accountable to somebody?
Yes, because it was literally this morning. Okay, so Jason looked at one of the things he did is look at my calendar or looked at my year. I create a vision board diligently. I'm like, here's my vision board. My vision board's real basic, by the way, but it makes sense to me. And then I write out my goals. What are my goals this year? So he looked at my goals. He goes, let's get real here. He goes, these are 90-day goals, my year goals. And I'm like, he's like, you tell me you can't do that in 90 days. I'm like, well, if I'm getting up early in the morning, I probably can. So he was like, really like, it's like, okay, so if you look at your calendar and look at your goals, and it goes, how can we create these 90-day goals to actually make it so it works, in your life, right? Mm-hmm. So like I look, and then what benefit are you going to get? So one thing we did is like one thing on my vision board, I was like, I'd love to take the family to Mexico for Christmas and not spend all the money on gifts, do an experience, right? So he's like, okay, so if you accomplish all these goals or your goals in 90 days, then I want you to book that trip for the whole family to go to Mexico as a congratulations to yourself. So then I take an individual item and then book it. It's like right now I want to do a full day multifamily event. And so we're going to do that on August 20th. I already booked it. So now nice. I already booked 3 of the 5 speakers. I'm waiting for the other 2 to confirm. And then I'm putting that all together because that was one of my goals that was like a big year goal.
I know we've talked about it a couple of times. So
yeah. So that now its emotions happen. That's going to get done. And then another goal was to get 10,000 members on my newsletter list. And
you just hit that, didn't you?
About 9,200 now. So I'm very close.
I was 10,000 followers on Facebook as we just hit.
We just hit 9,000. Yeah.
9,000.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But when I was looking at my big picture goals, another conversation with him, it's like, what's a couple because I had tons of goals. It's like, well, what goal feeds the other goals? Like, I was like, well, if I build a newsletter, I'll build the podcast following, I'll build the followers for the social media pages. It filled in like 6 buckets, that would help accomplish those other goals. So we kind of like focused in just on certain goals. So, that was, the 10,000 was another goal. And I got to look at my sheet for the other stuff, but you kind of get my point here. And I went off topic. What the point of the question you asked was?
I forgot myself. So.
Okay. So, but ultimately, I'm trying to look at these it was the goals, right? So ultimately, my goal is accomplish these goals within 90 days and time block them all out so I can kind of streamline things a little bit better, but be more productive.
It was about accountability and holding you accountable.
Yeah. And thank you. And it was just this morning I was thinking to bring that back. I was like, oh, I have a meeting with Jason next week, Tuesday, and I don't want to look like an idiot. And I don't think I'd feel like that if it wasn't such a person I looked up to versus just your traditional coach. And I was like, I don't want to show up there and not say I have not accomplished some of these goals. So yes, it is completely holding me accountable to myself. And it's pushing myself to work a little bit harder because I want, like when I meet with him, I'm like, I want to have everything with this event tied up. And then I want to have the next goal start to work on and show progress. So it makes me feel good. So, I love to be pushed and I need a coach that's really aggressive with me.
Yeah. Cause there's so many different, knowing thyself is big on what you need and getting a coach that some people don't like being pushed. Some people.
Well, so he did a questionnaire with me and, it's like, what's something that I could be doing better with you? And I was like, be more of an asshole, push me harder. And then the next time we met, his whole demeanor changed with me.
He seems, I mean, I've only met him once, but he seems very straightforward and very, I don't say in your face, like it's a negative thing, but like he seemed like he was someone that holds somebody accountable, I guess.
The coaching is super unique in the fact that, he doesn't go in with an agenda. He literally like, hey, so tell me about your week. Tell me what you've been working on. And then all of a sudden you say something that sounds, it's a sign. He looks for that one sign of weakness. And then all of a sudden he turns on, and then the whole conversation just wraps around that. Why'd you say that? Where are we going with this? What are you going to do? And then it just bridges off, and then you think that you have nothing to talk about today, and all of a sudden you're getting 30 minutes of like deeply being analyzed. And I know I love it.
I really like the I don't say lessons, but the activities that cause you to look inwardly. And I know Jerry has one. We did one at Sci where there was an exercise. Jerry does the $20 bill one. She did it at the Rio when she spoke of saying anyone who comes up and gives me $1 gets this $20. And it seems simple, but the whole lesson was, now what were you doing when you could have just come up to give me $1? Why didn't you just go borrow $1? Why didn't you, do an IOU or something, find a way to get this $20? And I reflect on that constantly of, where am I hesitating? And the same with the Psy was, how are you playing the game, the red and black game? It's more of looking at, do you take a leadership role? Do you, are you spending more time arguing? Are you thinking everyone's out to get you and all that thing? So is that where the importance of the quiet time has come in for you, is just the reflection and time to get clear with yourself?
Well, in the discovery mode of who I was in asking me when I was the most productive, he also, I said that my thinking place was either in the shower or in the sauna. And then I'm always constantly like writing down ideas. And so if I sit in the sauna, if I'm sitting there for 20 minutes and I'm not listening to music and I'm just kind of in my own head, I'm literally on my phone in the notes and I'm like writing out my to-do list for the day. So that's where the quiet time came from. Because I just said when I'm kind of in my own head, then I come up with the best ideas.
Do you have quiet time penciled in now that's not in the sauna or not in the shower?
I have it on the calendar, but I'm terrible about honoring it. But I'm really kind of discovered if I turn off everything when I'm driving, then a lot of stuff comes to me. Also, it's the sauna and shower. But if I'm rushed in any of those positions, then I'm not giving it its full. Oh, what's the word? I'm not giving it all it really deserves, because if I'm in a hurry in any of those situations, then I'm not giving myself the time to really cultivate the ideas.
And I think of those quiet times as a form of prayer and meditation. And I think that some people sit there with the Bible and then these ideas come to them. Some of them, they just sit and talk to themselves. And I love the idea of having it in the calendar, because I've heard time and time and time again in all the books, they say, show me your calendar and I'll tell you your priorities. And I think since we first met, you showed me your time blocking, and that's something I've tried to implement many times, but because I share my calendar with my wife and she gets blown up with my 75 events in the day of just, stopping to eat a snack and stretch. And she's like, all right, this is obnoxious. Just put the most important stuff. So are you finding that you have to make constant tweaks, or is it you kind of have it set and it's a good system?
No, constantly. Like if I set a goal, like I'll time block a goal a lot. And then if I didn't work on it, then I like to take it and drag it in the next opening. And then, so there's a lot of times that my calendar is really fluid because life happens, and we're all business owners, and you never know what's going to be thrown at you. So I'm constantly dragging and moving stuff because I want to make sure it's accomplished. So I'll move it to where it needs to be moved. And even though I'm not giving the quiet time, because it's in there every time I look at it, it's always in my head.
It's a reminder.
Yeah. So maybe I didn't sit down and take 15 minutes to quiet time. But maybe I turned down the stereo and gave myself to think because of that, where I'd normally be listening to a book or a podcast.
Right.
So,
Tool.
Exactly. I listen a lot of Tool. I almost wore my Tool shirt today. But I think that if you put in there, it's good. But maybe mean, I think it's really important to have a shared calendar, especially since you two are business owners. But why don't you guys both have your calendars on the things that you guys need to both be on? You just put an invite on those things that you're both tied with.
Yeah. I think I've
because
we're
all different people,
right?
And you sounds like you really need that.
Yeah, I think adding another calendar to my, like another email address to my calendar where it's just my daily reminders. The other side of it was, I had get up at 4 a.m, go to the gym, and all the stuff to get the day going before getting the kids ready. And after multiple weeks of not doing that, my wife, was basically like, you're just setting yourself up for failure, because you start the day and realize that you just missed your entire schedule. And so it's more about tweaking it. But hearing Jason, wakes up late, I mean, I will die on the hill that I get just as much work done as someone who gets up at 4 a.m, because when the kids go to bed, I start my underwriting, and I'm doing that till 3, 4 a.m. And if I sleep in till 9, then, I still got the same amount of work in, the same 6 hours of sleep. So it's funny to hear that. But
so me, it was just family time. I mean, and so we built the calendar around my family time. So I said, and then
does that stem from the rocks?
I mean, no, I mean, it stems from keeping my wife happy because, everybody's getting home around the same time. And for us, the kids are in bed by 8 o'clock. So, I see the kids in the morning for 30 minutes while they're getting ready. And then I see the kids from 5 to 8. So I'm only getting about 3.5 hours a day with my children. So why am I going to take away from that?
Yeah.
And as they get older, they're going to want less and less to do with you anyway.
Yeah. So how old are your kids now?
18 to soon to be 11. So,
yeah,
they're 18-year-old wants nothing to do with us, unless you need something. And, and then
is your 18-year-old still living at home?
Yeah, she'll be graduating here soon. So
wow,
turn her bedroom into a cigar room. That's what I keep saying. That's not what Valerie says.
This room would be perfect for that.
You just her room's right on the backside.
Put a vent on, and then podcast and smoke.
So I could turn hers into a podcast studio and cigar room.
I would love to be able to do cigars and podcasts.
It would be an ideal situation. I know when I first talked to you, like when we first started this about doing it, I said something about doing it at Safari just to do something different. But once you get the setup, like we didn't have a setup forever. Like it was.
We started in front of the fireplace upstairs, and then we learned about natural light and how difficult it is. But we started this without any intention. Like we have no goal on followers, no view count goals. It's really just to connect with people and hear their stories beyond what they like to show in front of a stage, and hear the real struggles of, trying to balance families. So we talk a lot about there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's work-life balancing. And you're constantly trying to juggle both. And like you just mentioned, you only get 3 hours with your kids a day. And if you're going to cut into that, especially being in real estate where a lot of stuff happens throughout the evenings, prioritizing the kids is like, if that's why we're doing it, then that has to be the most important thing.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people you see that are just all talk when it comes to that. Like, hey, I'm doing this for the family, but then they're not giving the family the justice and time that they need. And so then there's really no point to what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more I dive into that, I do think it's selfish. Like, I'm doing this for the family. You're doing it for the family because that's what you want and you feel is best for the family. But like a lot of times, this is just me talking personally. Like, I know my wife doesn't necessarily want it. She'd rather the 3 hours. So it's honoring her, like you said, and doing what makes me happy, or at the same time. So it is the balancing act. So it's a nice struggle.
Yeah.
So you talked about going to all your kids' events. I know you've talked about, I don't know if you still do it, but you still do something with the church, at the youth group or something like chaperone events.
Yeah. I just switched churches 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're 4 generations at my church, and it's just the sermons were getting semi-political, and
I remember talking about.
And I don't like politics in church. I don't want my politics. I don't want somebody else's politics in church. I just don't want to hear it. And then
because you were going to like an old church downtown or something like that for
my whole life. Yeah, I ushered for 15 years. I chaperoned over 20 youth trips. Been on handful of youth trips myself. And, all my donations went towards the youth, but the youth program really sort of fallen apart. So we switched to my wife's church that she grew up in, which happens to be really close to our house. And as a strong youth group, our kids just went through had their first communion a couple weeks ago, and tornadoes were happening. So we had to go to the basement, which was really fun because we did the communion. And we went to the basement, and then they're like, let's just keep this going. So then we had 250 people all put their hands on each other.
Oh, wow.
And it was just real powerful. It was fun pictures.
I got chills.
It was good stuff. So we're trying out. It's a complete start over though. It's hard to just jump in and start volunteering at something where you just don't feel like you're home yet.
Yeah, we're kind of, Valerie and I are kind of like that, torn between two churches. She just started working. Old church we used to go to, they offered her a job. Like they needed somebody in the office temporarily. So she's kind of working there temporarily. Might turn this up to full time. But so now we're like kind of torn between churches. So I feel I feel it. It's almost like starting over. Like you said,
It is.
It's how do you get plugged in?
Mm-hmm.
Like I was volunteering at the other church on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, so now I'm not volunteering as much. And it's just kind of torn between two homes.
We still do like the holidays at the old church because it's just it's tradition. It's tradition, and I still know everybody. And I know their families and I know their kids. I grew up with people. There's people that were in my youth group that I see that that now have kids that I see, and it's hard. But it's go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you switch mostly because of the kid? I know you mentioned political, but then you also mentioned the kids.
No, it was there's a political side of it that really really kind of bothered me, and that was the underlying factor. And it happened during COVID, and it's just, and it was really impactful for me, and I don't know if I want to put it out there publicly exactly what happened. I'll talk to you guys off air, but it was enough for me to really just kind of get really turned off by it. And I went from we went every other weekend. That was what we did. It was just family Sunday, church Sunday. It was just kind of always what we did. And went from that to like going like 3-4 times a year. And, and I wanted my kids in the youth program, and their youth program went to complete crap. So, this new church has a great youth program. We're just starting to get the kids involved, and so now we're going to spend the summer to really acclimate the family to it and go. The cool thing is that my wife's parents are lifelong members, are going there. She's got cousins that go there. There's a lot of actually members that I was friends with from my previous church that are members there. So there is some connections.
Well, so I mean, the only constant in life is change, and we've talked in many other episodes about how important people's identity is to them, and especially coming from the military, people completely identify with being in the military, and then when they get hurt, get blown up overseas, whatever, come back, they get stripped of that identity, and then they have trouble transitioning. Sounds like you've had multiple opportunities where you've had to pivot and completely change, your identity from being, the guy who throws big parties to doing basements and being super successful in that, to transitioning and being a real estate agent. And you've had multiple opportunities to do these transitions all the way up through this church transition. What is it that gets you through those pivots?
Oh man, it's a good question. I guess it's finding commonality is the comfort in it, because you're always you, right? But you got to find that thing that really makes you feel comfortable. When I did the Nightlife, I also had a really successful charity at that time too, called Dancing Belmont Stars. My business partner Elizabeth, we did over $1 million for local charities in about a decade. But when doing the Nightlife party scene, like I said, mentioned, it was really similar doing the events when it came into doing event. I still did the charity, so I felt like the in between, I still had something going on that was similar, right? And through all this, I was always a salesperson in the business side of it. So I was either selling marketing or selling foundations, and I did a whole bunch of other jobs. I was always that guy that had 3-4 jobs at a time. to make ends meet, right? And so, I'm that person now in a lot of ways. And so I find a commonality between friends and family and the type of work. So I always felt like it was in a similar realm. I always felt like whatever I wanted to do, I wanted to be with whoever the best was in the industry. So I felt like when I was back in the day, I worked for auto mechanic shops, and I worked for Jensen Tire, and I felt like they were the best in the industry. And then when I did Nightlife, I felt like we were the best in the industry. And then when I decided to go into I sold cars for a year, and then I worked for Woodhouse. I felt like they were the best in the industry. And then, then I worked for Thrasher. I felt like they were the best in their industry. And then when I wanted to get into real estate, I like the investing side of it versus I didn't want to be a traditional salesperson. And I felt like they were the best in the industry. And so I always felt like that was always like my goal. And, I want to be proud of where I was. And that was what always got me through it. The church wise, this is all new ground for me, so I don't know what it is, but it's the same faith. We're Lutheran ELCA members, and both churches are that. So the sermons are very similar. I've already been attending this church on and off for since I met my wife, and so there's some commonalities already there. It makes it a lot easier for that transition. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's great. What I'm hearing is whenever you make a pivot, you're diligent about making sure it's not a reset. You're not going back to zero. It's a lateral step in a different direction. And, if you're, even when leaving Thrasher, the money is an aspect, but it's not the whole picture. And so when you take that lateral step, there's a pay decrease, but the time you got back with your kids was still a step moving forward to build the life that you want. Because it's about building a wealthy life, not building monetary value.
Yeah. And I never want to start fully over. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
You mentioned marketing, sales, and I know you're an avid networker. I mean, you have a networking group. You are a member of other networking groups around town. Has that kind of been your fallback to when things change? You're talking about switching churches, and there's a network there you're already kind of plugged into, people from this and that. Is networking kind of, to his point, kind of the one thing that kind of gets you through to the next hurdle?
Yeah, it's the people in my life. Yeah, if that's networking, I think it is in some ways, but I think that, I think I'm an extrovert. So,
everywhere I've ever been with you, like 20 people, everybody, in the room.
Well, I think, the more people you surround yourself with, the more success you're going to have in all aspects of your life. I don't think you should close yourself off to the opportunities and people, otherwise we would have never met. Right. So I think that's really important. There was a political group that actually came into town to try to recruit me to start running for offices, and which I'm not going to do. And one interesting thing is he goes, I want you to open your phone right now. He goes, tell me how many contacts you have on your phone. And I didn't really know where he was going with it. And I was like, at the time I had like 8,900 contacts on my phone. And he's like, the average person has like 300. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. And he's like, that's why you'll get voted in if you get into politics. He goes, it's the people you know and how you put yourself out there. And I was like, still not doing it. But it was interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. I have no idea.
Yeah, we spent 3 days together, and he was a recruiter, and he's like, man, he was aggressive. And he's like, yeah, we're going to get you into the city councils. We'll financially back you. And we're going to get you, and then eventually we'll get you into a mayor or governor race. And then I'm like, dude, there's no way.
Do you think that would have helped you on your deck at your one flip that you had to redo 5 times?
Oh my
if you'd have been on the city council?
Oh my gosh, friends. Yeah, I did get clarity on that. I was doing a renovation. I had a contractor run off. And he didn't finalize the permits that we pulled. We did pull permits, and we just put a set of steps in the back. And the guy comes to check everything out, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to teach you guys a lesson." And because we didn't call in, so he had to tear down the set of steps 5 times and rebuild them because the piers look like even though they're precasted concrete piers in the ground, they look like they're an inch short. So we had to tear out the pad, tear out the pilings. After you made us vertically go in and dig it. And then the railings, we had to make them like 3 times thick. And the 4x4s eventually had become 6x6s after you had to add extra 4x4s. And then he wanted us to cross member each one and notch them into the 6x6s with lag bolts. It ended up costing me over $30,000 in the end for assessed steps.
I just imagine this guy somewhere telling the story at a bar, just like, guess what I got this guy to do? Like, oh, it's awful.
He has a terrible reputation. Thank goodness he just retired.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Yeah. That's good, because I don't know the guy personally, but I haven't heard many good things about him.
Oh, he was terrible.
Not just from this story.
I talked about him on one of our podcasts, and then Hal Richmond was good friends with him. He's like, you need to delete that podcast. I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm going to delete that.
Man. Well, so you talked about the imposter syndrome when you were buying the RIA and getting in front of people, not having, big portfolio. I dealt with something similar, I think, when, I adopted the 5 older kids, and my wife's been, very far along in her walk. And I went to church, did the things, got the t-shirt, thought I knew what I was talking about, but realizing that the kids probably know more about the Bible itself than I had even come close to. I had a lot of imposter syndrome around that how can I teach and lead them if I have no idea what I'm talking about? And the more I dig into the Bible, the more it's that I find is God doesn't say when you know the most, then you lead your kids. It's you lead your kids because that's your role. Mm-hmm. And so how have you learned from jumping into this role and taking ownership of it, that it's more just the act of doing and being in that position than it is knowing all the things?
I don't know if I have the answer for that. Because I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest with you. But what I can say is sometimes you just got to do, and then let other people judge, because it's like starting a podcast. It's like I got to get Owen on here to podcast with me on real estate because he's one with a huge portfolio, and and in the end, it doesn't really matter. People just want to hear a good speaker, and I'm not it. Owen's a great speaker, so I just stay quiet most of the time. But so in the end, I think it's just a matter of putting yourself out there and letting other people judge who you are. If you're confident in yourself, it's going to come out. And I think that's in all categories. Because there's a lot of people, like, I know I'm not the best coach when it comes to my kids' sports. Mm-hmm. I didn't play football, but I still helped coach football. I didn't play volleyball, but I helped my daughter's team go undefeated. I played 1 season of basketball in my life, but I took my son's team all the way to the championship undefeated until we lost in the championship. And I coach all those teams multiple times now, and it constantly the kids are like, thanks, best coach ever. And then they provide you this stuff, and the kids are happy. And I just did my due diligence in those situations to make sure that I was educated. Either I got on ChatGPT and helped me create my daily practice, or I got on YouTube and came up with some plans. But those little things are probably more than what the other coaches were doing. Mm-hmm. And so you got to put the effort in. You got to want to succeed, and people will see your true, who you truly are and what you want to be. I originally met all you guys at the RIA group. I didn't go out there and tell you I was the biggest and best, and I was killing it. I didn't even talk very much in front. I just said, here's the upcoming events. Here's this amazing speaker. So if you have an aspiration, if it's starting a podcast, if it's starting a group of some sort, just do it. There should be nothing holding you back. Create a community, and then educate yourself on what you're doing before you jump into it.
And what I'm hearing is that resourcefulness is more important than experience. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was early in the military, E1, I was showing up and had this E7 screaming at me, what's the answer to this? What's the answer? And I was overwhelmed. Like, I don't know. And one of the most important lessons I learned in my time in the military was, he said, I don't care if you have all the answers. I don't want you to have all the answers. I want you to know how to find the answers. And it sounds like every area of your life, you're just able to find the answers. And I think it's a form of building the parachute as you go. Mm-hmm. And I normally don't like that analogy, but because it encourages people to walk into things blind, but you're showing that just by stepping up and doing it, you can find a way. And if you really want to do it, you'll find a way. And if not, you'll find an excuse.
And don't lie. Like there's nothing worse than working with somebody that really doesn't know the answer, and then they feel like they have to lie to you, or they give you a wrong answer, and then they sell it so good. I'm first one to tell you, like, I don't know. Like, let me look and find it out. It's kind of like in real estate. Like if somebody asks them about a property, I'm like, I don't have that answer, but I will find the answer and I'll let you know. And I think you get a lot more respect and advance farther in life faster if you're able to just look it up and then be very upfront with people. And I think you're going to earn people's respect.
And now being on the commercial side, I see the residential agents are very, like, when I see residential agents do a tour of a property, they'll go and point at things and be like, oh, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. It's like you're almost killing the opportunity. Whereas commercial brokers, they're very much so like, I don't know, call someone, like call a contractor. I'm not an expert in that area. And I say that, nonchalantly, but it's for a reason. It limits their liability because they're like, that is not my area of expertise. If I start giving you advice on HVAC and then I wind up being wrong, that puts me at risk. And so I think it is important to not posture too much, because people have this way of inflating their ego by just saying this confidence that they know things that they don't know. And that leads to more problems down the road. So I like what you're saying is be humble enough to say, I'm not sure, but I'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because when I check out houses, because I was a certified foundation expert, that I have to point out everything I know, so I don't get sued.
Right.
But
that's in an area that you are trained and you're well familiar.
But I talk myself out of so many sales because we also flip houses and stuff, right? So we walk in something like, well, just gonna let you know everything I see, and then I probably lost more deals than I've sold because of that.
So you've also saved people probably hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's the positive side of that.
Right.
So to this point, I don't know if you remember the story, but I'd met you or whatever. I didn't think I had your phone number. But when I first got into real estate, I quickly realized that for investors, agents don't want to walk you around and show you property after property, and then you find some reason not to buy it or whatever. So what I would do is, any house that hit the market, any house I heard about, I would just go walk in myself. And then, so it was this triplex in Papillion. I went and I walked in. Normally, I would just go through the agent that's listing it and have them write up the offer. And because then they get both sides, they're kind of fighting for you. They have a little bit more to gain, if you will. Well, this one agent that had this threeplex listed, I just got like a really bad vibe from him. Like, I was like, I don't want to go through him. So I got in contact with you, and I said, hey, I walked this. I'd like to put an offer. My offer is. You had like 50 questions for me, like I wasn't expecting. Like, did you run a pro forma? Did this, that, and the other? Like, even before you were willing to write the offer up for me, and obviously it was. If I'd have got it, it'd have been free money. Pretty easy money for you, because I'm just like, hey, just the property address is what I want to offer, and but you were authentic about it. Like, let's make sure this is a good deal for you. Let me ask you all these questions, and then kind of go with it. I think I was like second or third person on the first or second loser, if you will. And then it ended up they didn't even sell it, but it was a different process, I guess, than what I'd been used to before. So it was.
Yeah, reputation means everything, right? Because you bought that, and if it didn't work out, then you would talk shit. And
yeah, I mean, it's a good point that but like I said, I didn't know you well at that time. But we talked a handful of times, but
yeah, I mean, you still get those phone calls at least every few days, and a lot of times you just ask them some questions, and then because also on my end, I don't want to go through and then put an offer in, and then you back out because the numbers don't make sense in the end. And then you're like, hey, why don't you help me? You have investment properties, right?
Well, now that I have a license, I put in a few myself. I'm like, this is a pain writing this stuff up. Like, I can't stand writing up offers, or I can't stand anything to do with the MLS. But
I had to write 3 contracts yesterday, and I was just like, it took me all day because I just was kind of getting a little rusty.
It's painful.
Plus, they're off-market deals, so that I had to do a little bit both sides of the work.
Yeah. So, I don't even know where to
Where are you at it? Where do you want to go from here?
I want to hear more about the personal growth that what are you still working on and improving? I know you said calendar management, prioritizing the family, all that stuff. But along with your goals and having, consolidate your annual goals down to quarterly, what other ways are you trying to improve your personal systems to serve the business, serve the family, and serve, your wife?
I don't know how much more deeper I can go there. More than whatever I said.
Well, just what are you working on improving? Because I feel like if you're not growing, you're dying, right?
Yeah.
And we're never going to have it all figured out. Things are constantly changing. So, my wife and I, we've started trying to prioritize, the time off and just turning off my phone at 5 and doing that thing. And that's something that I probably should have put into practice 5 years ago. But along with the identity of, like we said, having to pivot, we came to the agreement that if real estate's no longer serving our family goals, then we're not going to do it. And so it's just being realistic with that and having the daily conversations. My wife and I, now we allocate time when the kids go to bed to just spend time together that we weren't doing before, and seeing how that changes the dynamic and just cool down from the day. I wish I would have implemented those things earlier.
So we not intentionally, but it just happened that my wife and I are working out together now in the mornings, which has been kind of fun. That's never happened. She goes 6 days a week. And so she goes to the gym. She's at the gym at 4:30. So now when I show up, she's there. And that part's been kind of nice. And then we've been really diligent about scheduling date nights, which we've always tried to make that happen. But we're trying to get to, now that the kids are getting older and my son can babysit my daughter. And that part's been really fun. So we've been doing more date nights than we have in a long time.
That's good.
So date nights can be something simple, just going to dinner and then coming home early. But that hasn't been much of an option before. And my wife's been wanting to be a little bit more involved with the real estate side. So not just as like knowledge based, like she wants to know what I'm buying, what my goals are. So I've been a little bit more vocal in that aspect.
Has that helped?
For her, for me, I feel it's slowing me down quite a bit. Because so.
No, I can relate to what you're saying. Like it's hard because I don't know. Obviously, I see your wife; she's there at the RIA meetings and stuff at the door, checking everybody in. But like my wife's goals and my goals they couldn't be further apart from one another. You guys know I've had my share of fun partnerships over my life, and I just got done with a really hard partnership where I lost several $100,000s in the last year. And so she's a little more involved in what I'm doing right now. She didn't like the fact that happened, and she didn't approve of me getting into another partnership because I just have a tradition of bad luck with them. And if you go forward a partnership in the future, do you plan on kind of having her involved? My main reason for asking that is, in my experience, women are typically a better judge of character when initially meeting somebody than men are.
So the person I was in a partnership with, his character was fine. He was a good guy. He just made bad financial decisions in his own personal business, which overflowed into our business of shortcuts and him trying to still do right, but in the end, the shortcuts were killed us, and it killed us in time frame, killed us on budgets, and I was the financial backing of the business, and so so character wise, I have nothing bad to say about his character. He really was trying to do everything to the best of his ability. He just had over $600,000 in dues owed to him in his contracting company because he had some bad contracts. So in case he's listening to it, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to call him out, but in the end, he just made some bad personal decisions. Which, if he didn't make those decisions, we'd probably still be partners.
It's got to be
because I've had so many bad partnerships over my years that, and I've had a couple good ones too, but don't get me wrong. But in the end, I tested him. I did a test project and gave myself a 30-day timeline. I put my budget out there. He came in under budget and had the project done in less than 5 days. And I was just like,
that was the first time, because
Yeah.
you're the historic two
Yeah.
years to flip.
So I'm like this, like, what's this, And then I was renovating my family home into making an Airbnb, it was a 3 to 6 month project. It was an $85,000 budget, and it was like we're like the 2 months into that project, and things were going ahead, and everything was going good. And then the partnership started, and then a couple other things became priorities. So this project got delayed. Actually, I had backtrack. We got done with that project. I had a project that a contractor walked away from. He came in and fixed that and got that one done too for me, and got that up and running. And then I had this one going, and then we started the business partnership, bought a couple more properties. This got delayed and over budget. This went 18 months instead of 30 or 45 days. This project never got started. And so, I had to take out hundreds of thousands of dollars to kind of keep this up. And one property I just had to give away. And so, in the end, it wasn't, it was good. Judge Kecker it was just bad decisions. But I felt like I did everything right in the beginning to get there. But I'm constantly, and I know you're about to ask me too, and this is going to get into that. I'm constantly asking people about partnerships, and I'm so focused. I'll probably end up in a great partnership one day because of this, but I constantly am looking at partnerships. I'm looking at what partnerships work. I've read books on partnerships. There's a podcast that says partnerships. I want to listen to it, and in our podcast, I'm asking more and more questions on it just because of all the failures I've had. I had a partnership in a real estate company. It was great. I didn't, in the end, we ended up closing it down, but I learned so much in that partnership, and we're still friends to this day. And then I had, technically my podcast is a partnership with Owen, because he always gives me a hard time about that. He's like, our partnership's good. So if I look at those two, those went good, but in the end, I feel like if I look at the most successful people, they're complete opposites. One person's extrovert, one person's an introvert usually. Mm-hmm. If you look at a really good one, then because they both one person wants to go out and get the leads and be active, the other person wants to be behind the scenes and doing the numbers, right? Or some along those lines. And then also both parties, if they're both in the same financial scale, I think that also helps a good partnership. And when I've looked at other success partners, if we look locally, look at Chris and Colin. Chris they both came in with a significant amount of wealth. They both were professional. One person wants to be the homebody. The other person wants to be out in public, right? There's a good collaboration there. Wyatt Simon, what's his business partner? Sean French. Sean's the backing guy. You never really see him, but he's very important in that partnership. Wyatt's the guy who wants to be out in public and seen.
He likes the limelight.
Yeah. And that partnership really works really well. Mm-hmm. And then, God, I had another perfect example. Look at Owen. Owen's the out guy who likes being in front. Then he's got Brain and Tauber in the back, very quiet.
Yeah, I've never met Brendan.
Yeah, see,
I've heard he's been there, but he's like been in a meetup, and he walks out and like, oh, he's gone already.
But those are just some quick examples of locals, and you can kind of like find this pattern, and where equal wealth, both coming in with the same, probably amount of money coming into the account at the same time. Hopefully something somewhat significant going into that account to start that business. They have completely opposite, strengths that they bring in. And I think there's a recipe there. Mm-hmm. And I'm the worst person to give advice, but maybe I'm the best person to give advice. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but it's interesting. Do you guys have partnerships?
Yeah, I have a lot of partnerships, and I think from the very start and listening to all the Bigger Pockets podcasts and everything, and it's what I found is the money, hustle, and the knowledge, and you divide those up, and not every partnership needs to be a 50-50. And I think that the biggest thing is knowing when a partnership needs to be a 51-49, and when it's probably better to be a 75-25. And in real estate, we come in like, let's partner on this, and it's just assumed that it's going to be 50-50, when a lot of times it doesn't need to be. If I'm putting up all the money, I'm bringing all the knowledge, and you and I are splitting the time, that's an 80-20, because I'm providing most of the value. And in that case, if I just need someone to put in the time, I'm probably going to get an employee instead of a partner. But if we're both putting in time, we both bring equal knowledge, we both bring equal money, then yeah, it's 50-50 down the middle. So I think finding those three things and then sharing the dynamic and then assigning the roles and responsibilities in an operating agreement from the start is what served us well. And saying that, this is where I'm going to hold you accountable, and this is where, you got to fill each other's shoes. And the best coaching example that I think we got was when we had Coach come for DVG and talk about all the problems in the business and write them on the board. And the two things that he came down to, I've said this probably daily since that meeting.
Yes, James. Yeah.
Is communication and managing expectations. And every problem that we have in business and in life can be summed up in those two areas. It's either a miscommunication or you didn't manage expectations. And managing expectations is something that leads to a lot of hurt feelings. And then when people get hurt feelings, they start trying to screw the other, and it's just a slippery slope. So I think that between being realistic with how the partnership needs to be structured and clearly managing expectations, which is why I think it's important to have an attorney involved. And granted, I keep attorney conversations short because they're very good at adding up their billables, but they know all the potential problems that could come up. Like, hey, if your wife was to die and, whatever, blah, 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 how would you handle this in the business? Like, I've never even considered that. So put it on paper and get it agreed to. People think of a contract as a way I can get a gotcha. Like, how can I make sure that I cover my own behind? But it's just, I think of it as a sticky note to remind us of what we agreed to in a past date. So like, even if I'm borrowing money from a family member, we put it all on paper and say, this is what we're agreeing to. Mostly because I know I'm going to remember, I'm in this business every day, but you might forget that we agreed to this. And then when we get down and you say, oh, why'd I only get a 10% return? Because that's what we agreed to. So I think, especially as I, study for my LSAT and get ready for law school, and I see a different side of it where the importance of having everything laid out and all the expectations are managed. And when you come across a new problem that you didn't account for, just add an addendum and, amend your agreement. That's...
And I agree 100% with all that because I did the same thing. I went to the lawyer and we talked about, getting married because he was getting married and, what our spouses would get, how that look, first right to buy the business out if somebody passed away. And also in there, because I was so ill on partnerships. And so, I'm not sure I want to do this. I also had it written in there with his approval and consent that I had 100% management rights of the whole entire, did I say podcast? Of the LLC. I had 100% management rights of the LLC. So when it came time to close it down, I had write them off. I had actually choice of how much his payout could have been, and so. I got his approval and everything because I still respected him as a person. But I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to sign you out of the business. I'm going to pay you $1 to sign away. And I didn't need his approval, but we were all in full agreement on that because of the situation. But going into it, we're 50-50 because he was a contractor and his job, in part, what he was going to put into it was all the rehab. We were going to refinance a house and that was going to pay for a small portion of, like the Burr method. But that part of that construction money was going to go to him, which it did. But there was a lot he was carrying on top of that. But in the end, it didn't all work out.
But and there's always going to be unforeseen
but
things.
You have to do everything you just said because it is so important. And if you are 50-50, the person there's always somebody that's going to do a little bit more in it, or somebody that's going to be the person handling the business in general. That person handling business really should be the person that has controlling rights, because it takes all the hairy out of it if you do break up and you do want to figure all that out while you're still in the honeymoon phase. And because anything past the honeymoon phase, it's an awkward conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm hopefully by the end of the week have my first partnership, but
Somebody local?
yeah, well, the plumbing company
Okay.
I told you about.
Oh,
But
yeah. Congrats.
so, but it's been thousands of dollars in legal fees and
Mm-hmm.
tens of pages and, you know, tens and tens of pages of legal documents to cover it all. It is like going through a divorce and, you know, it's an S corp, so it can't be passed down. And it was, yeah, I learned so much going through all this and paying lawyers and going back and forth. So, well, that'll be my first real one. Like I've always
Are you partnering with the original owner?
with the original owner.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've always been of the mindset that debt is cheaper than equity. So I've always entered real estate endeavors that way. Plumbing companies obviously different because I'm not a plumber. So I have to be in a partnership if I want to be in a service-based business. So that's kind of my reasoning there.
So on the topic of buying businesses, I mean, it sounds like you're entrepreneurial in every aspect of your life. How do you avoid that shiny object of going after everything and just sticking to what you know, what you're good at?
Yeah, my wife hones me in on that one real fast.
That's an easy answer. He said.
Yeah. It's just I found this perfect flip house last week, and I was like, this is money. This is easy. They're like.
She said, "Ted, I heard this before."
That's it. What I'm like, this is as easy as it gets. It's already got the brand new wood floors. It's got the brand new windows. It's got the brand new furnace, AC, newer roof. Literally, we just got to clean out the hoard, and we just do a wholesale on this thing. And I'm looking 30 to 50,000 in 30 days. And she's just like. And she's like, nope, you still have this money you got to pay off with this bad partnership. And then he goes, she's like, then you can do this. Like, you know.
So you are in a new partnership.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm in a transition period. Like I've been selling off a lot of my real estate right now. I'm kind of over the traditional real estate. I want to get into storage units, something that's hands off. I would consider sober living homes too, because I feel like that's kind of a very hands-off business also. But the Airbnbs are a lot, and so I'm in a transition period. I'm doing lots of education on storage. That's the goal. We'll see where it ends up. But if I can do some flips and wholesales to create some income in the meantime, that's where my mindset is. But I gotta appease the wife. Finish this last piece of debt with it. So I'm going to list one of my rental properties next week. Tenants just moved out and did about 10 grand damage. So fixing that, and it'll be done by Friday. List this property, finish up that debt with that bad partnership, and then kind of get back on track of making money.
So I know you say that you want to be more hands off, but all the types of real estate classes that you just named, I see more as like businesses than just rental real estate where it's like park money, let it ride. So is there an aspect of the business side that you enjoy more?
Well, I in the end, I love taking something that's broken and terrible and making it beautiful. There's just something fun about that. And so everything I bought up to this date has been condemned and then renovated. And then I hold it because I don't want to pay capital gains, that short-term capital gains. So the Airbnbs was my initial answer to that. But the Airbnbs are really hands-on. I manage them myself, so there's a lot of work there. Right now, I have 7 of them going, but it can be really lucrative too. So that part's been pretty nice. You guys know Airbnb business, but it's just I'm just ready to. If I think I don't want to deal with, there's so much new tenant law stuff that's happening. Airbnb is going to get regulated eventually, and I just don't want to be there for it. And
stuck holding the bag.
Yeah, and I had a midterm, and I treated them really good. Like they were in there for a while. I brought them Christmas presents, and then in the end they thanked me by breaking the fans off and stealing my TV and requested a new couch. I put a nice pull-out bed couch in there for them to help them out, have more space. Their house burnt down, and then it was literally ruined. and 10,000 is a low end. That's just me doing repairs. And it does include all the furnishings that I'm just like not worrying about because I'm selling it.
Right.
So it's just kind of ridiculous.
Mm.
I had an Airbnb the other day, some crackhead, and they broke out the windows and everything in my apartment building, and an Airbnb would give me a $338 credit, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like this is my first time putting a claim in, and I felt like I was being conservative, but I was just like, I'm just done with that. I think if I can just find some storage units, put some security up. Yes, there's going to be an issue here and there, but it just feels like it'd be a lot easier. If they don't pay, you just put a lock on and there's a fee and they pay the fee and the lock gets up. Otherwise, it gets auctioned off. Yeah. It seems like a great concept. Yeah. And guess what? Storage units aren't going anywhere. They're actually now plotting in all the new construction. They're plotting storage areas because the HOAs aren't going to be allowing anything in the driveway for over 24 hours, and you can't put a storage shed in the back unless it's attached to the house and looks like the house. These rules are not going anywhere. My 1998 neighborhood just updated another 20 years of no storage units in the back. So that means that these storage facilities are just going to keep on doing better and better, and you're going to need more and more of them.
Yeah.
So
America's just buying more, and you got to rent a place for your stuff that you're not going to use, and I find it hilarious.
Well, but think about it this way: there's that aspect of it, but like I have had a storage unit now for 3 years. My grandmother, thank goodness, is still alive, but I'm storing all her stuff in a storage unit that's just sitting there for the $100 a month, and there's valuable stuff in there, but where's it going to go? Like, what are we going to do with it? I can't throw away that stuff. It's her memories and everything. Like, but I want my family to go through it and pick stuff out of it, but it just sits there. And like, so that's money for, and there's a lot of people that have, I was just telling my best friends, and he, his parents died, and he brought in a semi-load of stuff from Colorado. Right. And he's like, well, it's all expensive stuff, and it's my parents, and both his parents had died, and he has a huge house. He put some of it in there, but he's like, just has it in storage.
Yeah.
There's a sentimental factor.
There is. So before we get out of here, I have one final question I want to ask. What does freedom mean to you?
Yeah. Freedom to me is, I put $1 on freedom a while ago. And to me, it was like getting, where I was, getting $20,000 of personal income in every month that there was no name on it. It wasn't going to the rent, and it wasn't going to paying the bills. Like, after paying every bill I have in my life, I still have $20,000 left over, and just money for savings or whatever I want to do with it. And that was my number back then. That number seems a little bit low now, but that was, I always just said, if I can pay off everything I have and still have $20,000 left over, that I could live a good life. I could take vacations. I could make sure that the kids have money putting away. And I guess that number is still kind of in my head, of after everything is done, if I have $20,000 going into my savings account every month, then that's the minimum of being able to know that passive too. Like, if I don't have to, like, I can depend on my investments bringing that money.
Working 18 hours a day to not see your family.
Yeah. So if I choose not to work, there's still that money coming in. And that's to me, that's kind of freedom, freedom to, if there's a certain car I want, if the kids need something, the money, that money is there. So I want to be able to take $20,000 a month and put it in my savings account. And I think consistently. And I think there's freedom there with just life and not having anxiety, because a lot of times when especially as your portfolio grows, there's so many people I talk to all the time. They're like, and it's like, okay, Owen, every Friday we do a podcast. He's got $20,000 or $50,000 he's got to spend on something. Either somebody threw a Molotov cocktail in an apartment building. or he had a tear in a roof or something like that, and he's got like 450 units, and every week he's got a $20,000 to $50,000 expense, and that's scary,
Adds up.
Yeah, and so the more money you make, the more money you lose too. So I guess no matter where I'm at, if I could be putting 20K after everything into my savings, I think I'd be doing pretty good.
I have nothing else. This was fun.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you coming and sharing a little bit more.
Yeah. I appreciate it. We'll have to grab a cigar maybe. My daughter graduates here in a few weeks.
We haven't gotten together for a cigar.
It's been a while. So.
I do try to time block a 3 to 5 every as many days as I can a week for cigars.
So
awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you, Ted. Appreciate it. And really, all this goes back to you asking at least me on the podcast a couple of years ago. So thanks for that.
Well, it's all about community. It's all about us trying to have the most blessed life we can in the end. So I appreciate this. I love that you guys do this, and I love the progression you guys have had with the studio and equipment too. So
ever changing.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I gotta run Nicole.